Hey everybody, my name's Jay.
And I'm Tracy, and together we lead the South Orange County Church, which is a group of people just simply trying to be like Jesus. Today we have a dozen small groups or small portions of the church that are meeting together to discuss the things we're going to talk about today.
Yep, we really do believe, we have a conviction about this, that it is so helpful to be able to start off your week intentionally focusing on your relationship with God. So together we all set aside time to come together during the weekend and really be able just to talk about some of this stuff. So what we're going to do in this time together is we're going to look at something that Jesus said or something that Jesus did and talk about how that actually applies to our lives and how we can then take that kind of into our week. And that's why we love to come together. That's why we love to discuss it, because we do believe that a lot of learning happens as we're talking about this stuff with one another. It's not just knowledge that comes in, but then it's how we actually work it out and apply it to our lives. So today, this is our first episode, and we're really excited to see what happens with this. So buckle in.
Here we go.
Here we go. So, I don't know if you know this, but in our world right now, there is a lot of finger pointing going on. If you look through social media, you get on the news, there's always somebody trying to figure out who did something wrong, and then we're going to point the finger at them and place the blame on them. Right. And we're in the middle of this cancel culture where we're trying to even unearth what is something that somebody did a long time ago that is really bad, and then we're gonna make sure that they get called out for it. And that it's kind of just part of human nature. We all like to be able to point the blame on somebody else. This goes all the way back in human nature to
a long time
the
ago.
very beginning,
yes,
right?
Back to if you remember your story about creation from the Bible, maybe in Sunday school when you're growing up, you know that when Adam and Eve, messed up, they were very quick to blame somebody else. Adam blamed Eve, and then Eve blamed the snake.
Right. This woman you gave me.
It was the snake that made me do it.
But it's so easy for us to do that.
Yeah.
Right now with social media, it's just becoming a big thing because you can quickly jump on one side or another of a whole discussion, and because it's kind of fun to figure out, I choose him, and that's the one that deserves it.
Good guy, bad guy.
Even a few weeks ago, the Britney Spears documentary came out, and I just think it's interesting watching a lot of the introspection that is going on within the media right now as people are trying to figure out, okay, what is wrong about the way that we are in society? And I think there's some healthy discussion going on just around that. But this is very much present in our culture. It was very much present all the way back in the Garden of Eden. It's present with us right now in our lives. You may have something going on at work and you're wanting to kind of point out, well, whose fault is it? You get on the freeway and there's a problem with road construction. Well, whose fault is it?
Somebody in Sacramento.
It's got to be somebody in Sacramento. Yeah,
right? It's the government's fault. It's my boss's fault. It's my husband's fault. It's my, I don't know, if I just had a better education, if I just had a better family growing up, or there's always somebody to blame.
Absolutely. We were just talking earlier about how easy it was for us when we were, in our early 20s and just married, and we conveniently were able to blame our parents for most of our problems. And, our problems in life came from all the mistakes that they made with us. And I'm sorry, Mom, if you're watching this. But, this is just who we are. Yes. And we love to place the blame. So there's actually a really cool story in John chapter 9 that we're going to look at today where Jesus was confronted with this issue, and then he kind of talked about it, and there's some really cool things for us to learn from this. So if you have a Bible, flip over to John chapter 9. If not, you can just watch along on the screen. But so Jesus and his disciples are in Jerusalem, and they've been causing some problems. They've been stirring some things up there.
Yep.
As Jesus often did when he went to Jerusalem. But here he is, and so in verse 1, it says, as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now, I love this question. Let's just stop right here and think about this. So here are his disciples going, okay, here's a problem. We see it. This man was born blind. So who can we blame for that? So Rabbi, was it his parents that sinned that caused him to be born blind, or was it him that sinned that caused him to be born blind? So clearly they're trying to figure out who can we place the blame on. This is really interesting. They're focused on the problem and how we got here, right? And now we were talking earlier today just about how absurd, though, this question is. Because his disciples are saying, okay, did this man sin? And then that caused himself
to be born blind.
To be born blind.
So that means that he would have had to have sinned sometime in the womb.
Right.
Or something like that. Sinner in the womb, and then that caused him to be blind.
Or it was a proactive consequence. And
no, retroactive, right?
Well,
Oh,
no, God knew he was going to sin later when he was grown up. So I'm just going to go ahead and give him his punishment, give him his consequence now for the sin that he's going to commit in 20 years or whatever it was. I mean, but this also, it just reminds me about how irrational we can be when we are trying to assign blame.
Yeah. And
we don't always think things through, and we're not always really cognizant of everything that's going on in a situation. And then sometimes we just blurt stuff out. Have you ever blurted something out that you wish you wouldn't have said? Mm-hmm. Have you ever typed in a comment on someone else's post that you wish you hadn't have commented? Yeah. You ever post something yourself that you wish you hadn't have? Yeah. This can just happen where we say stuff without thinking. And, so this is surrounding the situation. So they asked Jesus, okay, who sinned, the man or his parents, that he was born blind? Because they're trying to identify it. So in verse 3, Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. And so Jesus takes them into this different realm. He said, actually, neither one of them sinned. There was a different reason for this. God had something else in mind. Now, this is interesting because the disciples were trying to assign the blame. They were trying to see, is there a direct correlation between sin and the consequence? And Jesus' answer was, in this situation, no. It wasn't. This is not a punishment because of a sin. Mm-hmm. There's something else at play here. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not consequences for sin, right? Because very oftentimes there are.
There are. You didn't study for the test, and you're probably going to flunk it.
Right.
You can't pray at the end, and there's this miracle. Or if you show up to work late repeatedly, you're probably going to lose your job. That's the consequence for not being on time. So there are consequences for sin, but it's not always that way. We can't look at every single problem in life and trace it back to somebody did something wrong. Whose fault is it anyway? It's not a bad guy, good guy scenario all the time. But that is, sort of our knee-jerk response. That we normally have that because we are surrounded in a culture that thinks pass, fail. We are just kind of steeped in this culture that's always looking for the bad guy to blame.
Right. So Jesus leads them here, though, into something deeper. And he's trying to help them see it's not this or this, but there's actually a third option. And rather than pointing fingers over here or pointing fingers over here, Jesus is bringing their attention up to God and saying God has something else in mind. Now, they couldn't see it in the moment, and they didn't know what was about to happen. But Jesus is saying sometimes things happen so that God can do something with it. Now, a lot of us are dealing with a situation like this. Maybe not that we've been born blind, but there is something that is causing us pain or frustration or irritation. There is something that is happening. It could be a relationship that is broken. It could be a situation at your job that is really, really difficult to deal with, and you feel like that you're trapped and can't get out. It could be just things that are going on, maybe within the people that you know at church, and things just don't seem right. Or maybe it's just something that you keep doing that you wish you wouldn't do. Some stupid thing, and you're like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And then you find yourself doing it again, and you feel like that you just can't seem to overcome. There's something probably in your life that you could think about right now that you could connect with and go, this is what it was like for this guy to be born blind. And you could be even in a situation where people are blaming you for the situation that you're in. So I want you to kind of even think about that right now and identify, like, what is that that is going on for you? What do you think it is that you feel like, man, I'm desperate for this to change, and I'm desperate for something different to happen here? And this could be where God is leading you also to a third option. This could be where God is saying, listen, the solution is not so easy. Some people are going to blame you. You may be blaming somebody else, but maybe I'm allowing this situation to continue so that I can actually step in and do a great miracle in your life.
Yeah, I think God is always trying to keep us from looking horizontally for our answers and to get us to start looking vertically for his answers.
Absolutely. So here's a couple things that I want you to think about and questions that I want you to ask.
Yeah.
As you consider the challenge or the challenging situation that you are in right now, when something happens and you're wanting to blame somebody, you're wanting to look at the person that you live with, or you're going to blame your parents, or you're going to blame your boss, I want you to stop and ask yourself this question. I wonder what God is doing here. I wonder what God is doing here.
Right.
And because there's a different kind of energy when you're trying to blame somebody, it puts you in this aggressive stance, and you're focused on like identifying and then attacking.
Yes.
And that's a much different energy from when you go, I wonder what could be happening here. So when you approach something with curiosity, when you approach a challenge with curiosity, it puts you into a different mind frame. And then when you say, I wonder what God is doing here, it puts you in a humble position where you realize that the creator of the universe is aware of your situation. He knows about your problem. He knows what is going on. And you are acknowledging that he's going to do something here, even if you can't quite figure it out. It's a great question to ask because it allows you to take a breath and go, I wonder what he could be doing. And I know when I have asked this question, when I've been in this situation and I have asked this question, and then I stop and I pray and I listen for God's voice, different scenarios will come to my mind. Well, it could be that this is happening. Well, it could be that this is actually what's going on. And a lot of times you'll find that God could be doing something with someone else. It might not even be about you, that the situation that you're in might be so that God can do something in someone else's life. So that's the second question that I want you to think about is, who is God trying to heal here? Because when you start thinking about that, then you realize maybe not everything is about you. You just might be you might be involved on the periphery here.
That's right.
But God could be working out something with somebody else. God could be bringing healing to someone else, and you just might happen to be kind of right in the scene.
We have to be very careful not to take everything personally that happens. Sometimes God is just working out something in somebody else, and we can really let it go.
Right.
Other times, we can say that he's actually bringing up something in our own heart that he's really trying to heal. And it takes whatever circumstance we're in to actually do that. Right. You know, we don't always know what God is doing, and we don't want to make everything about us, like you're saying. Right. But in every situation, when stuff comes up in our heart, we can be assured that God is trying to heal something that he can only get to in that particular situation, by allowing that particular thing to happen to you.
And now this is a difficult thing to wrap our minds around, that when there is pain, when there is a problem, when there is something that is broken, we don't like to wait for God to work. This man who had been born blind, he was an adult by this point. You find out later in the story, he was actually a legal adult. And so this had been going on for, depending on how we want to time that out, but 16 years, 18 years, 20 years or more that he had been dealing with this problem before God stepped in and brought healing through Jesus. And a lot of times when we're facing problems like that, we don't want to wait that long. I don't even want to wait 20 minutes, much less 20 years. I want to pray right now, and I want God to fix it right now. But when I short circuit that, when I don't ask, I wonder what God is doing here, then it keeps me from seeing that God could be working something in me and helping me to change. When I don't ask, who is God trying to heal here, I can miss the fact that God is teaching me to be patient, and that God is teaching me to be more like him in my character. And so it's when we ask these questions that it brings us more in line with trusting God to be able to deal with the situation. So this brings us kind of to the last question that I want you to ask when you're facing a situation like this. And that question is, how can I participate? How can I participate in what God is doing? God's doing something here. It might be about me, it might not be about me, but how can I participate? What do I want to engage? What do I want to address? Sometimes maybe it's just I need to stop and take a step back and let God work out the situation, because we know that he will. God wants to work in your life. God wants to address this challenge that is going on, and he will. He may not do it in your timing, but he wants to do it. When you're thinking about the people that are to blame, maybe you need to take a step back and go, I wonder what God is doing here.
You know, I think an important thing to remember is that we don't have to understand all that God is doing to be able to participate with him when he's doing something.
Right.
You know, I was thinking about how we had a guy come over to the house, and he was fixing our water or something. I can't remember what he's doing, a workman, and he found out that, you know, we were in the ministry, and so he asked Jay, as a minister, what do you make of the pandemic? You know, he asked him that question, and I kind of laughed, inside, because I was thinking, what is he asking? I think he's wondering if Jay's going to say, I think God is punishing us, or I think he's, these are the consequences of the godlessness of America, or whatever. You know, I don't know what he thought you were going to say, but I think he was looking for something like that. And, you know, when I think about the pandemic going on, I think this is obviously something that God is not surprised by. You know, God is not wondering, he's not wringing his hands thinking what's going to happen. He knows exactly what's going on. We don't know, but we can still participate and not miss the miracles along the way.
Right.
We can cooperate with him while he's doing something that we don't even understand.
Right. Man, that's good. Yeah. So as we kind of come to a close today, here's what I want to encourage you to do. You know, you're probably thinking about, you know, your situation or what's going on, and I definitely want you to talk about that and discuss that as you're comfortable doing. But I also want you to think about, like, those of you that know your Bibles, what are some scriptures that you can share with one another, with your group, that help you to remember that God is in control?
Yeah.
And some scriptures that help you to remember that even when it is dark, and even when it feels frustrating, and even when we want to place the blame on somebody, that it's okay for us to look for that third option and trust that God is going to work something out. And what are scriptures and ideas and prayers that will help you to kind of calm down, and instead of looking for somebody to blame, that instead you can put your trust in God. So I really hope that your groups are great. I hope that your discussion is great, and I want to thank you for joining in with us today. If you want to get connected, if you want to find a group around you, we would love to have you do that. We have some amazing people in our church here in South Orange County, and there is probably a group that is within 10 minutes of where you are right now. If not, maybe 12. But there's got to be a group close to you, and if you're looking for some people to talk to and connect with, we would love to have you be a part of what we're doing. So you can send us an email. Our email address is SOCChurch, stands for South Orange County Church, SOCChurch@OCChurchofChrist.com. You send us an email right there, and we will get in touch with you and help you find a group that is moving close to you. If you can't find a group, or you're not in one of our groups, call somebody that you know that loves Jesus and talk to them about the things that we're talking about today, so that you can learn to not blame people, but put your trust in God. And with that, we just want to say thanks for joining us today. Next week, you're going to love this. We're going to be digging in a little bit more to John chapter 9, and we're going to talk about how Jesus actually healed this guy and some of the lessons that we can learn from how he did it. So that's going to be really cool. So come back and join us next week. All right? Have a great week.